Hello and welcome to another video. Today I'm gonna show two games that I've played online with the Queen's Gambit that I think are didactic in that they teach how to methodically take apart your opponent, because in both of these games I was um, sort of starting off well and just increasing my advantage over time. So my first game was played on leeches, was a blitz game, 5 minutes, and it went d4, d5, c4, e6, which is the Queen's Gambit declined. My favorite line here is playing these two knights out and then taking here, and my opponent took here with the knight. So the theoretical move here is taking with the pawn. The reason, so even if you don't know theory, the reason I like this move better is that after you take with the knight, you sort of have, if you trade this knight off here, you don't have the knight here anymore on the king side, so there's no protection for your king. And also white just gets the center with e4 immediately. So that's what I played, e4, and as you can see, the win rate over here is pretty big. If we go back a move, you can see that the win rate for e takes d5 is better for black, while the win rate for knight takes d5 is better for white. Although in both cases, white has a pretty sizable win rate. So e4, and after knight takes c3, I just have this good center. And now my opponent played bishop e7, and I've actually had this position now in, I think, 4 blitz games against humans and 1 practice game against a computer. And in this position, I find the unusual move queen g4. So why is this unusual? Obviously, the principles that I teach are you have to develop your pieces first. You have to prepare your king side for castling. So you would usually put out your knights first, because the knights are a short range piece. And queen g4, so usually queen is developed last. So that doesn't make any sense. But why does queen g4 work? So first of all, it attacks g7, so we're just threatening to take, and ruins black's chances of castling king side. And the other thing is, usually the queen can get chased around, but because this knight here got eliminated, right? This knight is the exact knight which usually takes control over this square. So because there is, after e5 we just take, so we can't really be harassed around at the moment, at least. So this is why it's a strong move. And the other aspect of the move is, which I also realized when I first played this, is if black castles, which they do, that's not really possible. That's actually a mistake. And black castled anyway, because, well, it's a blitz game. And the move that punishes it is bishop h6. So this is a common pattern. So the king is opposite the queen. So you obviously can't take sideways, because that's not a legal move. And if you don't do anything about it, if you just play king h8, for example, the queen threatens to take it with checkmate, right? So you're threatening checkmate. And now my question would be, what are the two main continuations that black can think about? You can maybe pause this video, and yeah, if you don't pause it, so the one move is bishop f6, which is defending the pawn backwards, but this walks into e5, and yeah, your bishop just gets lost anyway. If you move the bishop, it's checkmate. If you move the bishop to g5, we just take the bishop. So as you can see in the database, there's king h8 as a common attempt, but that actually doesn't work, because we take the bishop, and the idea of king h8 is you get out of this line so you can take the bishop, but that just doesn't work, because after g takes h, you just have checkmate. So very easy to blunder this. So the other alternative is g6, and that allows you to just win material. This is a common trap that's important to remember because it appears in a lot of positions this similarly. And obviously queen and king opposite are always very dicey situations. So we take the rook. It's not that big of an advantage for white because the dark square bishop, which you would use to attack the king, is gone. So just you have an advantage, but it's not that big. So they took back with the bishop. The next move I played e5. So my question would be, what would be the natural move? And obviously it would be knight f3. But I didn't like knight f3 for one particular reason. And I saw e5, which attacks the queen with this bishop, right? And after the queen moves, for example, you take here. And if you take back with the pawn, then you get checked here. And there's actually no easy way to block this, right? If you block with the knight, the king has to move anyway, so you lose castling rights, which would be bad, which would give black an advantage, or it would give white a disadvantage. So what I didn't realize is that taking with the knight here is strong. I thought, okay, maybe the pawn structure gets destroyed or the knight gets chased around with c5 or something, but it's actually completely fine here. And the king is covered. So that's why I didn't play knight f3, which would have been the best move. But instead I played e5, which is actually the most common move here, exactly for this reason. And it's also trying to clamp down on this king for a bit, but it's not as effective as it could be because we don't have a dark squared bishop. Although maybe someday there will be a knight that's going to this square. Yeah, and the problem with that move is that black has c5, and I want you to maybe pause and think based on the analysis we just did why this is a strong move. Yeah, and it's obviously a strong move because if knight f3 now, we still have the same situation with takes, and it's just a check where you have to move the king. So yeah, but my opponent luckily well, not blundered, but they didn't find c5. They played knight c6 instead. After knight f3, knight e7, so they try to secure the king by moving the knight over. I play bishop d3, anticipating this move. Yeah, first they play c5, I castle. After takes, knight f5. Yeah, I just take. After e takes f, queen h4 offers a queen trade. Bishop e7 declines it. Queen h6 tries to aggressively maybe create chances with the knight here. But obviously it's just going to be taken, so you would have to prepare it with h4 first. That's exactly what I do. So b6, h4, bishop e7, and knight g5. And yeah, I think you pretty much have to take here. After queen takes, again trading. Queen takes d4. That is taking the attacked pawn, but actually if you think about the most important parts of the position, just the attack on this king is more important. So the correct move would have been something like rook a to d1, and if the queen tries to get another pawn, for example, you activate the other rook, so you just have a lot of activity. You have h5 threats, you have both of these lines open. You maybe have threats to go to h6 and deliver mate on the back rank. So one sample variation here would be queen b1, h5, it's pinned so you can't take. After this, for example, here. And now you're just threatening to go here and mate because this square is covered. And yeah, after they take, you just exchange for mate. And yeah, I don't think there's an easy way to stop this. Because there's also a second threat. So let's say rook f8, and can you spot the second threat? Yeah, the second threat is just going here and here, so this is actually unstoppable. There's queen b2, but it just loses a queen, so you just have, so this h5, h6 idea and putting the rooks on the open diagonals is just too strong. So rook fe1 didn't really account for that because the pawn isn't as important as the activity. Now I do find rook ad1. Rook d7 is also a good attempt. This is making use of the vulnerable bishop here. This obviously both defends the bishop and sets up a battery which could checkmate, although this is covered at the moment. Rook d6 still undermines the battery anyway. This rook was attacked. Yeah, this is giving up another pawn. Even now, rook d8 is an idea, although h5 is also strong. Here he tries to trade off again, but after we trade, we have another tempo, and that's the tempo we need to play h6. So after takes h6. There's two defensive moves here for black. Maybe you can try to find them. Either just going back with the rook or moving the king here. Instead I played f6, which looks reasonable if you see that, the idea is trying to checkmate here. But of course this hangs the pawn in this direction, which I took. After rook e8, I'm coming in for checkmate already. This bishop is just being hung, although it's even better to just go for checkmate instead of going for the bishop. So in that way I played the best move, but yeah, then we both got, as you can see, we both got low on time, and I didn't find the best mate. So maybe you can try to look for it. So best would be rook f to f7 if they try to, for example, stop it with bishop here. You can just take, you move over, there's another check, and the king gets mated on the back rank. And because the bishop is here, you still have this one more move. So, yeah. This just also highlights again the power of putting rooks on the 7th rank. In the real game, he just ended up losing on time. And this brings me to the second game. So this was a Queen's Gambit accepted, so d4, d5, c4, and he took. And usually Queen's Gambit accepted is in theory a good line, but the problem is that many weaker players think this is just an extra pawn that they can have. But trying to hold onto the pawn usually results in disaster because, first of all, you lose the center, so white can just put 2 pawns in the center. And second of all, the tactics just don't work out. So white will always have tactics to win back the pawn. So the move that I play here is e3. There's also e4, knight f3. I think e3 is sort of the most easy to play approach because you can directly punish b5. Obviously b5, a4, there's this famous trap. So if a6 then takes, if black takes back, you take the rook, and if c6 then you can take back and queen f3, and weirdly enough this rook in the corner cannot be saved, so black has to sacrifice some material, like here for example, and black is already down a piece. But they tried another approach, bishop e6. That's actually quite interesting. So that doesn't immediately lose for black. It defends the pawn. But it's obviously a bit awkward. You're blocking your own pawn. And for now, at least, you get to keep the extra pawn. But as we will see in the game, that doesn't really do well. So I played knight f3 because I've looked at this once and I remember that knight f3 is the best move, although I don't know exactly why. I think the idea is maybe to go knight e5 and maybe try to win it back this way. They played f6, which is a bad decision. Obviously never play f6. But also in this particular case, knight e5 isn't a big threat. This is preventing knight f6 from black. And it's just, as you can just see from the win rate, it's just not a good idea. Simply simply there's no reason for this, and it just weakens the pawn structure tremendously. Instead, just develop with knight f6 and try to have a normal game. So I developed further. Yeah, there's also knight a3, which is also an interesting idea, also trying to go after this pawn. Well, I did the more orthodox method of knight c3. c6 makes sense on its own. The idea is to prepare b5 and permanently hold on to the pawn. I play a4 to prevent precisely that. Queen d7 is going a bit off the rails. I think maybe you have to develop your knight here with knight d7 because black is already behind the development. I play e4 to strengthen the center a bit. They play b5 to try to hold on to the pawn. I take, they take. I played d5, which was the point of e4, so to prepare to kick the bishop. The bishop gets kicked to g4. After h3, bishop h5, here g4 would be strong, but I play bishop e3. And now, if you look at black's position, black already has a lot of problems. So first of all, the black queen has moved, and a bunch, and the black bishop has moved a bunch, but these pieces are still on the starting squares. This knight can't go here, it can only go to h6, where it can be taken, which isn't great. This piece cannot move. This knight can only be taken here or taken here. So it's already very, very cramped. This rook cannot move, and this king is not castling. So it's already very bad. They play queen b7, which makes sense if you prepare knight d7, but it's just it's still just another queen move, right? You're already down so much development. Bishop e2 tries to develop another piece. Bishop f7, it's just sort of another slow move. I think maybe you already have to take or something, or play e5, I guess. But as you can see, it's already +5, so it's already very hard to recommend moves for black. Yeah, I just immediately try to go for the attack by playing knight d4. This is putting the knight in the center on a well-supported square where it will go to one of these squares to really deeply affect black's position. After a6, I just castle, which obviously also activates rook, so it's also a very active move. g6 makes sense in that you want to develop this bishop here or here, and maybe also castle at some point. b3 undermines this pawn chain. They have this idea of b4 here, which is just attacking this knight, and after this knight moves, they have another move. So in general, this is a good idea if you're black in the queen's gambit accepted, because you have a strong passed pawn that's also connected. But in this case, it actually helped white more because it helped activate this knight, and this knight will immediately go to punish black by going to knight c5. After queen c8, I found this very nice move here. Bishop b5. The idea is obviously if they take, we take the rook. So it's just a very nice check. You can't block because, well, yeah, this square is protected like a million times, and this square is also attacked multiple times. So yeah, you check here, king moves, you take the queen, right? So the only reasonable move is king d8, but king d8 has its own problems, which is staying opposite of the queen. So already there's some ideas of putting the knights here and going for this cover check. I played knight c6, not necessarily the best move. After day trade, my idea was bishop takes c6, so you're on a safe square where you're also winning another tempo on this vulnerable rook. After rook a7, I found knight e6, and it's already a forced mate here. So yeah, at this point here there was also forced mate if you move to the e6 square, but yeah, I went this way, and here after knight e6 there's a forced mate in 7. The idea of knight e6 is after day take here, so this is uncovering an attack here, and after day take and retake, that's also uncovering attack here. So you have at least an attack on the rook. If you calculate it carefully, the king moves here, and if you take the rook, then the king takes the bishop. So you're not winning that much material. But for another reason that you'll see in a second, it's still a good move. So bishop takes e6, d takes e, and of course king c7 to counterattack the bishop. Also because that's the only sensible move. But yeah, so I didn't take the rook because I already saw mate possibilities. And I also saw this possibility of bishop d7, which is gaining a tempo on the queen. Of course, you can still try to save at least get the bishop for the rook if you play queen b7, which protects the rook, which is an attack here. But the problem is that the king gets weakened, so bishop f4. Obviously, if you go into the discovery, that's never a good idea. So yeah, in this case, it would have been actually a better idea because it's at least not made immediately. He ended up going to king b6, and this is just made after queen d4 with the crisscross applesauce here. So all the squares are covered by the queen and the bishop working in tandem, and the rook's covering the last square. So there was only 25 moves, and just he didn't get to castle, he didn't get to develop any kingside pieces. It really shows you the power of the queen's gambit when it's being accepted, and you just have a massive center, and your opponent is not knowing how to develop their pieces. And yeah, this was played on chess.com, also with 5 minutes and 0 seconds increment, which is why the ratings are a bit lower than in the first game. Alright, thank you for watching. I hope this was an instructive game, or I hope those were 2 instructive games, and see you next time.